I'd like to call this regular council meeting of March 27th to order. Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Nixon, Councillor Orlando, all those in favor? Motion is carried. And I need a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of March 13th. Councillor Brothers, Councillor English, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes of that regular council meeting of March 13th? Okay. So we have two public hearings today, and I'm just going to read a statement on running a public hearing, and this opening statement will apply to both public hearings. This public hearing is being convened pursuant to Section 464 of the Local Government Act. At this public hearing, the public will be allowed to make representations to council, and all persons present who believe their interests are affected by the proposed bylaw shall be given the opportunity to address council or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Those of you who wish to speak concerning this proposed bylaw should commence your address to council by clearly stating your name and address and give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. And I'm requesting that people go up to the podium and use the microphone for that portion of it. Please observe the rules, and if you have any concerns with the manner in which the hearing is conducted, you direct your comments to the chair. Members of council may, if they wish, ask questions of you following your presentation. However, the main function of council members today is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council at this public hearing to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. Everyone shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard at this meeting. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making his or her views heard. In considering the proposed bylaw, council has received documents which may influence its decision. These documents are available to review in a binder located at the sign-in table or alternatively on the city's website. We do have a speakers list started for both public hearings, and if you wish to address the hearing, you can ensure that your name has been placed on the list located at the sign-in table. You may add your name to the list at any time. Each speaker's initial presentation will be limited to 5 minutes, provided the comments are relevant to the issues at hand and the hearing is not being obstructed. This initial time limit is to allow everyone a fair opportunity to address council respecting the proposed bylaw amendment. After everyone on the speakers list has spoken once, speakers will be allowed a supplementary 3-minute presentation, which will be limited to additional comments to what was previously presented to, so that everyone that wishes to speak may. In your supplementary presentation, please do not repeat the comments made in your initial presentation. And again, just for your information, is that I will be going out to the public after the speakers list for a minimum of 3 times. There is lots of opportunity for people that wish to comment. Before we begin, I want to ask the corporate officer to confirm that all due process was followed according to the Local Government Act.
Yes, Your Worship. For the first public hearing with respect to Business License Amendment Bylaw 2214, we do not have any comments from the public. And for the public hearing for OCP Amendment Bylaw 2219 and Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2220 for Columbia Park Drive, we did have 3 comments from the public, and council has them in their package.
Thank you. So our first public hearing has to do with the Business License Amendment Bylaw number 2214, and what this is allowing the businesses of Revelstoke to participate in a community, more communities than just Revelstoke has a business license. So you buy one business license, and I think it's good for 20 communities altogether? Yeah. So that's what this public hearing is about right now, and we've received no comments, as well as we have nobody on the speakers list. I'm going out to the public for the first time. Is there any comments on this Business License Amendment Bylaw number 2214? For a second time, is there any comments on this Business License Amendment Bylaw? And for a third and final time, is there any comments from the public for this Business License Amendment Bylaw number 2214? Looking for a motion to close this public hearing. Councillor Nixon, Councillor Brothers. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Motion is carried. We're now going into development.
The other motion, Your Worship.
Sorry.
Your Worship, I'll bring forward that the Business License Amendment Bylaw number 2214 be adopted.
Motion by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Brothers. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you for catching that for me. So we're going into our next public hearing, and this has to do with an official community plan amendment bylaw number 2219 and zoning amendment bylaw number 2220. This is for 131, 135, and 145 Columbia Park Drive. And I would again like to ask the corporate officer to confirm that all due process was followed according to the Local Government Act.
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you. And just to remind the public,
I have a declaration of conflict due
Sorry,
to a business relationship with one of the applicants listed there. Thank you.
and I just want to remind the public that one is that we do have a speakers list, and I will be going out to the public for a minimum of 3 times for any comments from the public. We also have the applicants here as well, and they may or may not wish to speak depending on how this public hearing goes. And we have a presentation by Mr. Whitehead.
Thank you, Your Worship. This proposed OCP bylaw amendment will amend the OCP designation for a portion of 131, all of 135, and all of 141 Columbia Park Drive from T3 suburban land use to T4 walk-up residential. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment will amend the same area from R1 single-family residential zone to R3 medium density multifamily zone. There's a drawing, there it is, of the portion of 131, which is this rear portion. This will permit a maximum density on the property of 30 dwelling units per hectare or 12 units per acre. That will result in a maximum of 12 dwelling units on the property. At the February 27th council meeting, council approved the currently proposed 9 dwelling unit proposal, townhouse development, subject to receiving favorable bylaw amendments among some other requirements around servicing, subdivision, and landscaping security. There's a diagram of the proposed development today. The subject properties are located adjacent to the golf course, which is zone P1. There's some single-family dwellings to the north and to the south, and then to the east across Columbia Park Drive, and an existing 8 townhouse development to the north. You can see the 2 buildings here, which are currently zoned R3, same zoning which is being applied for today on this proposal. Similarly, adjacent OCP designations of T3 single-family residential to the north and south, Civic Institutional to the west on the golf course, T4 Limited, which is a duplex residential designation across Columbia Park Drive, and T4 walk-up residential, which is the same as the proposed for the existing townhouse next door, as well as what is proposed today. 2 public comments, or 3 public comments, I believe the corporate clerk or corporate officer discussed, were received, and they're attached to your council agenda. They address a number of concerns regarding infrastructure capability and land use. I'm happy to address those if council has any particular questions regarding them. Otherwise, that's my presentation.
Councillor Nixon?
Just Mr. Whitehead on snow removal. Our bylaws cover off that people cannot remove snow off their private property and deposit it onto the streets, right?
Correct.
We're already covered with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from council before we move? Councillor Brothers.
I raised this before, Mr. Whitehead, just in terms of parking. If there's not enough parking within that residential complex, is there a possibility of parking on the street, or how is that managed by the city?
So in the development, there's currently double garages for each unit, which comes up to 18 parking stalls. There's additional 3 to 4 visitor parking stalls, and then additional parking in the snow storage area, which of course would only work in the summer. There is potential for upgrades if council wish to request those as part of the zoning amendment to potentially develop the boulevard for additional parallel parking. That will be subject to an engineering review to ensure that that's possible. It may result in the removal of these two existing trees on the front boulevard as well.
Any other comments or questions from council? So we do have a speakers list, and a few people, the proponents are here, and I'm not sure if they, I think that they've indicated that they may speak later on, they may not. Okay. Kathy Granstrom, you were uncertain if you'd like to speak to council.
Yeah, I may speak later.
Okay. Lisa Longinado.
I'll speak later, thank you.
Okay. Later is going to come up very quickly. So everyone else has indicated that they did not wish to speak. Of course, the speaker list is now finished, and there is opportunities for the public to participate if they so desire. And maybe a good point would be there is some comments that were written in, and maybe Mr. Whitehead, you could make a comment about the parking that seemed to be a little bit of a theme, and whether there's enough parking in this development. I'll take the seat over there.
My paper's back and forth. Thanks, Your Worship. I saw there were some concerns regarding parking with the adjacent property, the townhouse there. We took a look at the property and some comparatives, and that those units have single-car garages and these ones have double. So taking into account the single-car garages, plus 12 on-site parking stalls, plus 3 boulevard parking, that provides 23 parking stalls on the neighboring property. This proposal has a similar amount of 28, which I've got here, 22 on site, which includes 18 plus the visitors, and 5 potential boulevard sites. Is that correct, Daniel? And that would be on Columbia Park Drive for potential expansion. Plus 1 potential, I'm not sure what.
Relocating the
Right, so for the record, to relocate this, right now there's a potential garbage bin in an enclosure here that could be relocated and free up another stall on the property.
Okay. All right. So the floor is open. If anybody from the public would wish to address council on any concerns or questions that they may have. Yes, sir. Robert, would you mind coming up to the podium and speaking to the microphone? I don't mind introducing you.
Robert Kwadika, Mosey Road, I don't know the number, but the apartment number is 1406. That's someplace. I didn't come to speak about this, but just that the parking is obviously an issue, and I was wondering about the size of the garages. Kennedy Village was approved, I guess, with the garages being qualifying parking spots, and I would suggest that majority of the vehicles used in this town cannot use those garages that are existing in the Kennedy Village because of the size of them and the height, especially of SUVs. And so I have no idea if these are bigger, these double garages, but I just like to.
I looked at that at 600 square feet, but I couldn't find the measurement. Lewis?
They are designed for, I think they're 26 feet deep and 22 or 24 feet wide, so you can actually park vehicles in. Okay, deep. 10 foot. Make it a door 10 foot too.
They're designed for 2 pickup trucks, not 2.
Right.
Again, back to the public for any comments on this. Yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Lisa Longinado, I live at 134 Columbia Park Drive, right across the street from the new proposed development. My worry here is that in the other condominiums, we have based it on a senior's 55-year-old and older probably going to be dealing with snowmobiles, boats, a lot of toys. And so I'm wondering if there's any additional storage area that they could set aside for toys and not just rely on the two-car garage.
And I think that the short answer to that is that the parking is what we talked about previously, is that I don't see any other parking for those kind of amenities or toys.
Your Worship?
Yeah.
No, Your Worship, there's not additional storage. The city is unable to restrict zoning based on age. That would be regulating users and not use. So the decision to have 55-plus development on the neighboring property would have been a decision made either by the developer or by the strata that was initially formed on the property, and it's not a decision that the city can make.
And correct me if I'm wrong, is that if a strata decides later on that that's what it wishes to do, it could do that amongst itself.
I believe so, Your Worship. I think there's been some recent case law down in Richmond or Vancouver around restrictions to various people in stratas. I'm not sure off the top of my head if that's still considered. Louis?
Your Worship. In regard to the type of people that would be buying, I shouldn't put type of people wrong way, but the age group of people buying these condos, we have a list of 14 people already, and they range from my age to maybe 10 years younger than me. There's a lot of local people that want to get out of their houses and move down to the golf course. So we are somewhat in control of who's going to buy them or not. And the idea for this is not to have snowmobilers and people buy the units. They're going to be a high-end unit. They're not going to be cheaply priced. And we expect that, given the number of people we have on our list, and not people on the list are people that are very serious, and there would be, I think, it'll be very similar to the people that live in the condo unit next door. So I don't see any issues there at all. We did a lengthy process with Daniel and Nigel going through this, and there were some concerns where Lawrence's house was because of the height of the units beside it. So Daniel moved our units, I think, 20 feet from the property line as opposed to 10 feet, and we put screening up. So we've done everything we possibly can to mitigate all the issues that neighbors and people might have. I think that when we get into the construction, the parking on site, the hydro kiosk, the landscaping, and the garbage bin, I think, with the city's permission, will be reviewed to make sure we make the best use of the area. And other than that, I don't have any other comments other than, we're very pleased with the response we have of people wanting to move in here.
Okay, thank you. Going back to the public for a second time, is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Go ahead, come on up to the podium, Lawrence. Brenda, I'll get you in just in a minute. And just give us your name and speak into the microphone, please, Lawrence.
Yes, good afternoon, Your Worship. My name is Lawrence Davis. I live at 145 Columbia Yard Drive. So my residence is one of the ones that is more effective than others. Now, one of my concerns is the use of water and the use of sewage. I know that the condominiums built to the north of me have a pumping station going on the side of the road, and I understand there's going to be a pumping station in the units that are being built there. Now, my house is hooked up to sewage, the city sewage, and I'm wondering if these pumping stations could have a bad effect and possibly put pressure into the sewage line that could back into my house, since my street just hooked up below ground.
Mr. Thomas, have you got an answer to that?
Your Worship, I believe we've been working with the developers, and we're hoping to be able to build this development without any pump station required. If it is required, it'll be a very low lift. It would be it won't be a lot of fuel coming into the system all at once. And your system, as all sanitary sewer systems, is designed to that it doesn't back up into it. The sewer main on the street is a 8-inch pipe or a 200 millimeter pipe, and it's got a lot of capacity rating. So, from the utility perspective, there's no real concerns with the sewer, or the fact that it potentially have a lift station, a private lift station, discharging into the sewer system.
Now, my concern about water pressure, I know that up on the far end of LaForne Boulevard, that they have very low water pressure, and I'm wondering if this could affect the water pressure coming into Columbia Park Drive.
Mr. Thomas, have you got a response to that?
Your Worship, I'm not quite sure what the concern is with water pressure here. At the intersection of Columbia Park and Reform, we have quite a large water main servicing that area, and we have high fire flow available. As you head west on Reform Boulevard, it is a 2-inch water main beyond Columbia Park Drive. It's the west of Columbia Park Drive, and that would contribute to the lower pressure in that area. However, where this development is being proposed, I believe it's a 6-inch water main, and there is adequate fire flow from the TransCanada reservoir up above down here, and then also the Gulf Coast valve system as well, providing additional fire flow.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lawrence. Brenda.
Your Worship, my name is Brenda Resnick. I live at number 2151 Columbia Park Drive. My concern is the boarding that's going to be permitted. 2 to 5 people could be rented to and live in these new places. And that's my biggest concern, is where are these people going to park if you've got rentals and boarders in there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitehead? I'm assuming that looks like she's referring to the article that was in the Times Review?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. To clarify the boarding situation, so anything over 2, now let's preface this by saying it's very difficult to regulate people in a dwelling. But having said that, under our zoning bylaw, you can't rent more than 2 or 3 unrelated individuals on a property. If you are, it's considered boarding, which does require a business license. So if someone was lawfully renting or boarding on a property, they would be coming into City Hall requesting a business license. At that point in time, we would be checking the parking regulations, and this property would not meet the parking regulations for that boarding use. And so they would not get a business license for that to operate legally.
Councilor Brothers.
Can I just clarify, I'm sorry, if it's zoned for single family, so they can, and assume it's a 5-bedroom, for example, how many people could they rent out to?
I believe through Your Worship, it would be 2. You could rent 2 bedrooms without a business license.
Okay, thank you.
And I think where the confusion is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Wade, but because boarding houses are part of the use of this zone, it's lumped in with all the other uses. But again, a separate application would have to come forward for them to be using it as a boarding house. And like you said, then they would look at the parking requirements, which this development couldn't meet, so it wouldn't be able to operate as a boarding house, even though boarding houses are a permitted use in this zone.
That's correct, Your Worship. Many of our zones have many different uses that are permitted. Some require business licensing, others are inherently permitted on that, in that zone.
And I guess, having said that, is that just like everybody in this room and everybody in this town, they have friends and family that come to visit, and there's those occasions where Christmas, New Year's, or whatever, we all have that, and so at certain times, every household is going to have more people in it for a short period of time, and that's not really what I would consider a boarding house. It's just a family that is visiting. Brenda, are you satisfied with the answers to your question and comment?
I am.
Okay.
Just that if you go to give a license for boarding, expect us back.
Well, and I guess the short answer to that is that they can apply for a boarding license, but unless something drastic happens to create additional parking, they wouldn't be approved and wouldn't be given a business license. And even though the zoning is allowed in that zone, they have other requirements that they have to make that they currently can't meet.
Okay.
Lewis.
Thank you, Mark.
There will be, it's a strata unit, and the strata will set the rules, and I'd be willing to bet the strata, as the strata that Brenda lives in, will not allow for that sort of thing. It's just, I don't think it's a non-starter.
Councilor Brothers, do you have your hand up?
Nope, no, I'm good, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Going back to the public for a third and final time on this OCP amendment and zoning amendment, I can't remember the numbers, 2219 and 2220. Any more comments from the public? I'm looking for a motion to close this public hearing. Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor English. And all those in favor? Motion is carried. And we have another.
Your Worship, I'll bring forward that the official community plan amendment bylaw number 2219 be read a third time.
Motion by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Duke. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Brothers.
I just wanted to mention that I had some concerns about the parking and the renting out of rooms as well, but I think Mr. Whitehead has given us some good answers to that, and so I'm prepared to support this motion.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. And
Your Worship, I'll bring 3 forward, that zoning amendment bylaw number 2220 be read a third time.
Motion by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Sulls. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Nixon.
Just, Your Worship, it's really good for the public to realize this is a strata-built capital project. These are local business people putting capital money into building this. I think they're going to do a good job. I think they've worked hard with staff, and I think they'll continue to look for ways to improve the layout of the property and work well with their neighbors.
Very well said. Thank you. Just before we take the vote on this, I just wanted to remind the public and remind council that this public hearing is closed, and people should be refraining from talking to council about this, about these 2 items, and also reminding council that the public hearing is not closed. Any other comments on this motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. We'll take a couple minute break. I'm sure a lot of people would love to hang around and listen to watch the rest of our council meeting. Some may have other things to do, and we'll give them an opportunity to clear out.
Mark, I'd just like to thank Nigel and Daniel for all the work they put in to get this passed. It was, we learned a lot of stuff from them as we went through the project.
And I'm sure they learned a lot from you too, Lewis.
More to come. Thanks, dude.
mechanisms there, you know?
Cleaned her right out.
Nobody cares about anything else.
Okay, so I'm going to carry on with this meeting, and we are on announcements from the mayor. Okay, just two quick things. One is I want to congratulate the Snowmobile Club on their 50th anniversary of being a club here in Revelstoke. And I reflected over the last few days about this and how this community has evolved with its winter tourism really has to reflect, the starting point has to be with the Snowmobile Club going back to 50 years. People discovered what the backcountry was like and what the snowfall was like. Then we evolved into heli ski businesses. Snowmobiles always were here and always were expanding. Backcountry skiing, and then of course snow biking came into play, and with the development of the resort. But I think it really reflects on the Snowmobile Club for really discovering what we have in our backyard, and hats off to them on their 50th anniversary. I also want to congratulate the Grizzlies, who have made it into the finals, and all they got to do is win the next 4 games against Kimberley, and they're laughing. So I know the mayor of Kimberley is going to be going after me, but so I thought I would start first and tell him that he's going to go down in 4 games, and we'll take it from there. Anyways, we have one delegation today, and it's the Revelstoke Child and Youth Mental Health and Substance Use Collaborative, and Stacy and Jill are here to talk to us.
So thank you very much for having us this afternoon. We thought that it was a good time to give you an update on our local Child and Youth Mental Health and Substance Use Collaborative. So I'm just going to give a super brief history, and then introduce Stacy, who's doing a great job. So as you know, the Revelstoke Community Substance Use Strategy was released in 2010, and at that time the primary recommendation for children and youth was to develop partnerships and collaboration to create a comprehensive prevention framework to strengthen protective factors and address risk factors for children and youth involved in problems with substance use. In response to this recommendation, we started the whole Revelstoke Youth Initiative. And by March 2012, we had established the Youth Liaison position to work with all youth, connecting them with the many opportunities available in our community. And of course, that's Leslie Hogg, our Youth Liaison. So throughout all this, it was recognized that while the Youth Initiative was showing great success in supporting all youth, there was still a need to provide a deeper level of support for youth who were struggling with mental health and substance use challenges. So a small ad hoc committee was established as a subcommittee of our Youth Advisory Committee in March of 2013. So this group took the lead on doing a number of things. Probably one of the most significant kind of legacies of that small ad hoc committee was the Youth Fair, which is going to happen again at the beginning of May this year for the 6th annual. So as part of this group, we had engaged the Canadian Mental Health Association, and through our relationship with the Canadian Mental Health Association, the provincial initiative, which the Shared Care BC initiative, which was a partnership between the doctors of BC and the note of what we were doing, and offered to engage Revelstoke as part of the provincial collaborative. And this relationship brought in about $150,000 for Revelstoke over 2 years, so 2.5 years, to really dig deep. And our ad hoc group became the Revelstoke Child and Youth Mental Health and Substance Use Collaborative local entity. Big capital. But this expanded our mandate from serving only youth 12 to 19 to children, youth, and their families aged 6 to 24. So it really broadened the mandate. And it also brought a lot more people to the table, including physicians, which has been an absolutely critical link. So further short, this relationship really helped us focus work with the ultimate goal to improve timely access to mental health and substance use supports and services. And I think one of the big things is that we stopped, for quite a long time, we stopped just talking about substance use and problem substance use, and now we're completely linking it in with mental health. This has been, a couple of things have been really critical to our success. And one, I have to say again and again, has been our very strong partnership with School District 19. I cannot stress enough how important this has been, from having our youth liaison work right in high school to, counselors working right in the high school, and just such a good working relationship with School District 19. So we knew that when we got the $150,000 from Shared Care, we see that it was going to end in December of 2017, December 31st. So last fall, I applied for a social grant from the Columbia Youth Trust on behalf of the school district. So the school district became kind of our umbrella agency that our collaborative is now kind of working under. And we're successful in getting 2 years of funding to carry on our activity. Stacey Byrne has been our project lead since April of last year, and she's been doing a great job. And I know that children and youth have been a high priority for council. I know that substance use and problem substance use and mental health has been high priority for our community. So we thought that we'd give you an update. So I'll be happy to introduce Stacey Byrne, and she'll take it from there and just tell you a little bit about what we're doing and where we're going.
Okay, thanks, Joe. So I will be providing a final report that we provided to the province for the funding that we received from Shared Care BC, so from 2015 to 2017. So just to reiterate what Jill mentioned, our mandate is to increase access to effective and timely care for those between the ages of 6 and 24 with mental health and substance use challenges. So the ways that we've been doing this is through, one being, so when we're trying to access effective and timely care, a big piece of that is through collaboration. So we coordinate bi-monthly meetings between all stakeholders, including the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Children and Family Development, paramedics, RCMP, private practitioners, Canadian Mental Health Association, School District 19, and many more. All of the members of the committee are listed in the final report you'll be receiving. Another piece is through best practices and evidence-based care. So we've been providing and offering training and support, coordinating that for service providers and all members of the Rebel South community. So some examples of the training that we've provided is mental health first aid, Safe Talk training, which is suicide awareness training, and assist training, so applied suicide intervention skills training. Through that, so even just for an example, through Safe Talk, we now train 45 people to be suicide aware and ask directly whether or not somebody is having challenges with thoughts of suicide. The assist training, so the intervention training is 24 people, and mental health first aid training approximately 25 people. Another piece to increase effective and timely care is through community consultation and engagement. So we've been constantly collecting stories, survey responses. We've collected from approximately 65 or more individuals on their access to services, supports, and mental health and addiction things struggling. The second piece of that, so if we now have effective and timely care that's available for people, is encouraging them to make sure that they are reaching out for those supports and services that we do have within our community. So one of the pieces is building community-wide capacity through increased mental health and addiction literacy. We've been doing this through sharing your story campaigns, writing articles, being on the radio, going to farmers markets, hosting speaker series. Another piece is promoting services and supports and resources. So creating a wallet card, which is a small card that fits into your wallet and pulls out and has local and regional resources and information on there. So it's kind of right at your fingertips if you should need it, or if you know somebody who's in need, you have access to that information as well to share it. Another piece is bringing services closer to those who need it. So through at our table, we've now been able to have, there's a physician, it'll either be a physician or a public health nurse at the high school every Wednesday, which is available for drop-ins. So for youth who weren't accessing Selkirk Medical or Mountain View Medical, that now exists right in the high school, and so far it's been very successful. The other piece is allowing people's voices to be heard, so those who may have access services. So we've been reaching out to people, telling them to let us know what they need, where the gaps that might exist, and then what we can be doing to help fill those gaps. So part of also encouraging people to speak out and have their voices heard is to take this out of the idea that mental health and addiction happens in the fringes of our society and the dark gray corners, and instead bringing it out into light, like I'm very tight. Bringing it to the light, talking about it. It doesn't have to be a somber topic. This is something that happens in everybody's daily lives. It's not on the fringes. It's all around us. The other document we created is a Pathways to Care document. A lot of information, but that's a good thing. Because it's showing all of the services that are actually available to people within our community who have need access to basic needs from health and nutrition, regular checkups with your doctor, financial, employment, education, housing and clothing, relationship and family, to more complex needs and unresolved issues. So accessing child youth mental health through MCFD, addiction services like AA and NA, family and support services, and specialized support. And these we have located around the community. So some are in the employment center, in the high school, in the medical centers. We also have this online on our website as well at rebelservice.ca. So for us, one of the next steps will be to continue to promote and strengthen our services for those 6 to 24 years old with mental health and substance use challenges in their families. We'll be updating and reprinting the wallet cards, updating the Pathways to Care, as well as working on a revelstokelife.ca website, which will be a partnership with the Rural and Remote Division, City of Revelstoke, and our collaborative to provide these resources and things like the Pathways to Care document, which in a 2-foot by 2-foot document is quite complex, but if we can put it online, then it's much more easily navigatable. We'll also continue to build literacy around mental health and substance use challenges, hosting more speaker series, being on the radio more, continuing with print articles, and continue to hear from community members on what they need, so asking for the feedback and sharing their stories and experiences. So the next step that we would ask for members of the City Council would be to continue to encourage and support mental health and substance use resources in Revelstoke, continue to demand best practices and evidence-based services, and continue to share personally events, services, supports within our community, and sharing your own experience. Part of what we're doing here is also just making sure that every door is the right door. That's why we're trying to put it, through City Council, through different ministries, through the public, sharing those wallet cards with people who they may not think they're struggling, but somebody might approach them, because that's who we talk to, is our friends. We go online, so making sure that every door that we access is the right door, and that first door that you access is the right door, that you don't have to keep asking and knocking and going again and again. Just encourage people to get involved, share ideas, share your feedback, any information or suggestions that you might have, and we'll always listen to more feedback. Other colors on types, if you have some suggestions. We have websites, again, it's revelstokecymhsu.ca, email and phone. Any questions?
Councilor Nixon.
So the money's been coming into Revelstoke for 5 years. We've got these pathways, care, these wallet cards. What are the measurements that you're sending back to the ministers? Like, where's the intake numbers that are increasing? Are you tracking that?
One of the things that we collected for Test of Change were when training happened, so we did some before and afters for service providers. So for example, with the mental health first aid training, there were a number of scenarios we asked before the training how confident they were on dealing with certain situations, like if they saw a child that was sucking on their sleeve, or that might be not necessarily just a child, but anyone between the ages of 6 and 24 that maybe was cutting, what their confidence level was with dealing with that or approaching that. And then after the training, we asked those same questions, and so we saw that there was increased confidence for how to manage those things. So coming at it with less stigma and more support. We, at this time, I don't think we've been tracking intake and how many people, the increase that would be on that. I think the one change that we could be seeing with increased intake would be with the doctors being at the high school, that there was one of the physicians had mentioned that a youth who had come at the high school then set up an appointment at Belford Medical and attended that appointment. So it's continuing now with having a family physician in there and have their support.
Important to track and measure those outcomes.
Yeah.
They're making a real difference because of the real. Okay, thank you.
Aaron.
Stacey, in terms of the public consultation that you did, what were some of the key themes you heard from those you consulted with regard to how we can make improvements?
I think one of the themes that we kind of pulled out from that was a lot of youth were saying that they weren't reaching out for help because they didn't know what to say. They just weren't sure how to kind of initiate that conversation. So I think this is part of bringing those services there, having the door open right away so that there doesn't have to necessarily be as much confusion of how do I access that support or what do I say when I get in there, just presenting myself within that office signals that, I'm looking for something and some support. I think some other things were also struggling with accessing services in such a small community, fear over privacy or accessing child youth mental health, which is housed through the Ministry of Children and Family Development. Lots of families aren't necessarily wanting to walk through those doors. So through the Pathways to Care document, we also included online resources, reputable resources that are offered through the Canadian Mental Health Association. There's also Looking Glass BC, which is based out of Vancouver, has an online moderated peer support chat room. So encouraging people to access services in that way as well, which is why we're online and on Facebook so that you can also be from home or from your phone accessing, finding out what those services are that are available without necessarily having to know what the first thing is to say. But there's still work that can definitely continue to be done with that, with supporting.
One of the things we heard too, that people get fatigued when they have to tell their story time and time again. So we're trying to really streamline the services so that doesn't happen. So someone can walk in through every door, right, or I told this story once, and then that process of seamlessly and fully supported in their community.
And we'll also be working on setting information sharing best practices between everyone that's at the table. So having a better understanding of what is best practices for information sharing, and also encouraging, so during some of these consultations, if there is information that's shared that doesn't need to be shared, being comfortable saying to each other that we have these best practices that we follow, that hopefully people will feel more connected and they're when they do share.
Any other comments from council? Stacey, I want to thank you for the presentation, and Jill, and just one of the comments that I would like to make is that I was sitting in this chair when we created or funded the social development coordinator's position, and the reason why that we initiated it was we knew that there would be social changes in the community as the community transitioned into a resort community. And it's great to see years later programs like this where people that really need help have all kinds of access, and what we have to do is individually, collectively get out the word for those people so that they can get the help that they need, because it is available, and I'm glad to see that we have that. So thank you both for coming today.
Thank you.
Aaron.
Yes, for item 8A, I have a conflict due to a business relationship with the applicant.
So we are on 8A, and this is the Parks and Rec and Culture Riverside Forest Walk Project. Council Brothers.
Move that forward in two parts, Your Worship. Part one, that council provide the BC Interior Forestry Museum with a letter of support for the Riverside Forest Walk project.
Motion by Councillor Brothers, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion is carried.
Part two, that a highway use agreement be entered into with the BC Interior Forestry Museum for the access road to the land they have leased with Ministry of Forest, Land and Natural Resources Operations and Rural Development.
Motion by Councillor Brothers, seconded by Councillor Souls. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Nixon.
Just, Your Worship, it's good to see this going forward. Both the Forestry Museum and the Railway Museum are doing projects that are moving their museums forward in the public eye.
Great. Any other comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. Can we get our councillor back in? Thank you.
Aaron?
That's me. Okay, Council, we are on 8B.
Your Worship, I'll bring that forward that the city's 2018-2022 financial plan and 2018 tax rate bylaws be prepared for council consideration on the basis of the 2018 draft budget and long-term financial plan presented to the public on February 20th, 2018, without any amendments.
Motion by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor English. Discussion on the motion.
Just your worship, we had a meeting with the public here, and I think we're hearing compliments this year.
I know, I was a little taken aback, actually.
Kudos to the staff.
Yes. Any other comments or questions on this motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item C. Councillor Armando.
Your Worship, I move that the 2018 grant in aid applications outlined in the summary document be referred to a subcommittee consisting of Councillor Nixon, Councillor Brothers, Councillor English, and Director of Finance and Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture for consideration.
Motion by Councillor Orlando, seconded by Councillor Sauls. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Orlando.
Yeah, Your Worship, this motion is to create, as it says, a subcommittee to take a look at the grant in aid requests. Of course, these are an annual budget kind of attached item where organizations like public service organizations, church and all that, request grants and aid. And the subcommittee is going to take a look at the overall program as well as the applications before them.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? Thank you, everybody, for volunteering. And all those in favor? Motion's carried. We're into bylaws, administration, municipal park regulation bylaw. Councillor Brothers.
Your Worship, that the municipal parks regulation bylaw number 2185 be ready first, second, and third time.
Motion by Councillor Brothers, seconded by Councillor Sauls. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Nixon.
Just good that there spells out an appeals process in here if somebody is asked not to attend the facility, it clarifies that it comes to this table for an appeal process.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. And item B.
Your Worship, I'll bring forward that the Clean Air Bylaw 2186 be read a first, second, and third time.
Motion by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Sauls. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Nixon.
Your Worship, this came through the Health Committee, and it's just updating our Clean Air Bylaw and trying to make the air cleaner for everybody participating outdoors in Revelstoke.
A worthy cause. Any other comments or questions on this motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. And fees and charges amendment. Anybody? Councillor Orlando?
Yes, Your Worship. I'll bring this forward. Item 9C, I move that the fees and charges amendment bylaw number 2216 be adopted.
Motion by Councillor Orlando, seconded by Councillor Sauls. Discussion on the motion.
Yeah, Your Worship, this is an amendment that adds a couple particular items to the fees and charges bylaw, including changes to the business licensing and regulation amendment, mostly to accommodate the inter-community business licensing to allow for prorated business licenses that aligns with the other communities. They want to do it on July 1st every year, just so it's in alignment, and also changes to the vehicle for hire bylaw.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you for that, Councillor Orlando. Financial plan.
Your Worship, I'll bring forward that the 2018-2022 financial plan bylaw number 2222 be read a first time.
Motion by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Brothers. Discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried.
And I'll bring forward that 2018-2022 financial Plan Bylaw Number 2222 be read a second time.
Motion by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Brothers. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion carried.
And I'll bring forward that 2018-2022 Financial Plan Bylaw Number 2222 be read a third time.
Motion by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Brothers. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion is carried. And then I'm assuming at the next meeting it'll be final reading and adoption. Yeah. We're moving into staff reports. Item 11A. Councillor Brothers.
Your worship, 11A, that pursuant to Section 58(1) of the Local Government Act, John Lowe be appointed Chief Election Officer and Teresa LaRose be appointed Deputy Chief Election Officer for the purpose of conducting the 2018 general local election.
Motion by Councillor Brothers, seconded by Councillor Sauls. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion's carried. We're in item 11B. This is development variance permit DVP 2017-15 for 707 5th Street East. And Mr. Whitehead, you have a presentation for this?
Yes, you will.
Here it is. I see it now.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application is for a variance to the front yard setback at 707 5th Street East from 6 meters to 4.8 meters. A small one-story bungalow to the, I believe, east, south. How do we describe our streets? Do they go south or east or southeast or southwest? They're all on an angle. The proposed variance will legalize the existing location of the front wall of the house. There's a survey plan there. Front walls are located in similar setbacks throughout this neighborhood. So you can see it's roughly about 5 meters from the front setback, or 5 meters from the front property line, whereas now our front setback is 6 meters. By approving the front setback variance, this will permit by legalizing the location of the house, this will allow the applicant to rebuild the roof. He's proposing to change the orientation of the roof, which will allow for front and rear overhangs. So if we go back to the front, you can see, the ridge is going this way. And there's a proposed drawing here in the rear, and they're going to put it the other way. This will allow them to construct a 1 meter overhang to protect the door. They're going to rebuild their front entrance, and we've also discussed with the applicant who wishes to construct an open porch on the front of the house as well. So by approving the front setback variance and reducing it from 6 to 4.8 meters to where it is today, it will permit further encroachment of 1 meter for roof overhang and further encroachment of 2 meters for open porches and decks. That's permitted in the general section of the bylaw, of the zoning bylaw. So by moving the front lot line to this property, you're allowing that encroachment to go a little further. There's been a similar house with an encroaching deck partway down the block. Staff are supportive of this proposal. It has a nice neighborhood feature to have, as we don't find it overly encroaching into the front yard. To conclude the resolution today, we accept the application and direct staff to deliver public notice to the neighboring properties, landowners, and RVers at the property line.
And really what started this whole thing is that because the house is existing non-conforming is what started this whole thing.
Correct. You can't do structural alterations if you're non-conforming. Well, we don't know if it's legal or not. Our current records don't go back that far. But assuming it's legal non-conforming, we're legalizing it today.
Who would like to make a motion? Councilor Dewar.
I would bring this motion for 11B. The council approved development variance permit application number 2017-15 from Steve Lovnia and gives notice of their intention to consider the issuance of development variance permit number 2017-15 for 707 5th Street East. To vary the following section of zoning bylaw number 1264 to reduce the minimum front yard setback in section 7.3.6B of the R2 zone from 6 meters to 4.8 meters.
Motion by Councilor Duke, seconded by Councilor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. Councilor Pelletier.
The only thing I'd like to say is, again, it's so nice to see everybody making improvements to their property. We have so many people coming forward, and it's really great, and it just enhances the city, so I applaud it.
Any other comments, questions? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. We're on item C. And Mr. Whitehead, you have a presentation for us.
Yes, Your Worship. This is quite an interesting and exciting proposal we've got here. This is a development permit with a number of embedded variances, which, if approved, will permit the construction of a two-dwelling unit structure at the front of the property that's today containing the Cube Hotel. So there it is today, and it would go up right here, and we can show what that would look like. This would be looking at it from the street, I believe. Yeah, right there. That's from the street. That's from the Cube looking over to the side, and that would be looking at it from the rear. That's all I got, I guess. The intent of the dwelling units is principally for the applicant to provide staff housing for his business. The design of the building builds off the unique design of the existing Cube structure. It includes two bachelor suite units split up-down. So it's an up-down duplex, basically, with access to the second floor unit up there. They are bachelor suites, approximately 350 square feet each. We're calling them micro suites. The proposal includes landscaping around the site, which is shown on the site plan, a few shrubs on the garden on the front, and then I think that may or may not be an existing tree, and a couple of things around the patio here at the rear. There's a complex lot layout with the age and the historical subdivision pattern on Campbell Avenue. The lot lines will be resolved prior to DP issuance and are subject of the resolution today. Oh, where did it go? I lost half my presentation. Sorry, try that again. I can work off this one. So right now, these three lots on the existing building, what's the building on the corner? It's on three lots, and then the applicant owns this lot, and this lot, and they're tied together. And then there's a pie-shaped lot, and then the cube lot, and these ones are tied together. So we're going to get the lot lines all straightened out, and there'll be a proposed split right here, and then this back portion would become part of this house, and then the front portion would have the mini cube out front. 4 variances are required to permit this proposal. The first proposed variance from 70 square meters or 750 square feet for a dwelling unit size down to 350, roughly 350 square feet. Looks fairly substantial, but in essence that's due to the nature of the wording in our bylaw. The zoning bylaw currently permits bachelor suites within apartment buildings at a minimum size of 40 square meters, which is 430 square feet. But technically, because there's only 2 units in this thing, it's not an apartment, it's a duplex. So we're varying, essentially council can view it as varying the bachelor suite minimum size in our zoning bylaw from 40 square meters or 430 square feet down to about 350 square feet. So not as substantial as a variance as it looks on paper. Considering modern housing forms, desires, and necessities of life today, staff are supportive of this size for this particular proposal. We don't see it as it's pushing the limit of the small size of a unit, but I don't think it's below that threshold where it would no longer be habitable. The proposal also requires a variance to permit residential dwelling units on the ground floor in a C1 zone property. Council may recall we saw a similar variance over there on First Street West. And a slight reduction, another variance, a slight reduction in usable open space for the dwelling units. However, there's still a small deck and patio space for the tenants. So the upstairs unit would get this deck, and there'll be a patio down here for the downstairs residents. The final variance is to reduce the minimum parking requirements from 3 stalls total, which is 1.5 per unit, to 0. The applicant is amenable to a covenant on title, ensuring minimum 30-day rentals of the units. This is a common way to ensure residential units are used primarily by staff or permanent residents of the community and not tourists. Staff would not be supportive of the parking variance if without such a covenant and agreement. Further to that, as part of that agreement, it will exclusively state that if the agreement was ever to be discharged, that the landowner would be required to, at that time, to contribute to the cash in lieu payment for parking. So if you're no longer going to be using this for staff housing or month-by-month rentals, then we want to see a contribution to the parking impacts of those non-permanent residents in the downtown. Overall, staff are supportive of the proposal. The resolution today will accept the application and approve staff to notify property owners and tenants within 100 meters of the property line of the proposed variances. The application will return to a subsequent council meeting for consideration of the public comments and final issuance of the permit.
Let's get a motion on the floor, and then we will look for comments.
I'll bring the motion C forward that the application for DP 2017-14 be approved and council give notice to its intention to consider the issuance of DP 2017-14, including variances to the following sections of the zoning bylaw number 1264. A, to reduce the minimum floor area of each dwelling unit in 2-family dwellings from 70 meters squared to 32 meters squared. B, to locate a dwelling unit on the ground floor in the C1 zone. C, to reduce the required parking for dwelling units in the C1 zone from 1.5 stalls to 0 for the proposed structure only. And D, to reduce the minimum usable open space of the dwelling unit from from 5 meters squared to 4.5 meters squared.
Motion by Councillor Duke.
There's more.
And that issuance of the above variances be subject to a registration of the section 219 restricted covenant against the title of 311 Campbell Avenue, restricting the use of the proposed dwelling unit 30-day rental period or longer, and B, submission of the subdivision layout to the satisfaction of the approving officer.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion. Councillor Brothers.
Mr. Whitehead, this is a lovely project. I'm a little sensitive to parking issues these days, and I think most of the residents are very sensitive to it as well. I gather that you're making an assumption that whoever lives in this is not going to have a car, and if they do have a car, what's the idea about where to park them?
That's a good question, through your worship. The parking, the correct assumption is yes, they would not have a car. Otherwise, they would be parking either on the street on Campbell Ave, where a number of cars currently park overnight, or on the Q property itself.
Councillor Nixon.
Your Worship, I was here at council table when the Cube Hotel came forward, and there was a lot of discussion around parking at that time, and it was basically that we recognized that Campbell Avenue had 24-hour parking, and the Cube Hotel has turned out to be a very nice feature of downtown Revelstoke, and I'm going to support them.
Councillor English.
I'd like to applaud the proponent for looking for a solution to staff housing and coming up with something that is going to fit onto Campbell Avenue very well. Will continue to be a showpiece in our community. I think that this is great. I think that this is a really, really great way to ensure that you're able to find staff and house them without taking up rental space in the market outside of the properties that he owns. I think it's a great solution. I'm happy to support this.
Councillor Orlando.
Yes, Your Worship. Yeah, staff housing is a component of affordable housing, and it's definitely a big issue here to see someone come forward with a plan to provide 2 units of staff housing, and also to see staff working together with the applicant to try and find creative solutions to the issues that we're facing. Seems like a win-win to me, so I'm happy to see this come forward.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, Councillor Duke.
Yeah, I just think it's worth echoing that from Mayor Orlando, that it's nice to see staff working with proponents to make sure that things can happen like this in the community. Because as you can see, there's a lot of variances that have to happen to make it a go, but it isn't fit for this lot.
I, as well, would like to echo all the comments. I want to congratulate you, Mr. Simard, for coming up with a solution for your employees. I think that this is hopefully going to set a precedent for a lot of businesses to start looking at how they can solve housing issues with their employees and make it easier to get employees. So I know it was a struggle to get to today, but I do want to thank you and congratulate you on being a little more forward-thinking and coming up with this solution. And also I want to thank staff for working with the proponent to get us to today. Any other comments or questions from council? All those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried.
I will move to continue the final issuance of DP 2017-14 be subject to the following. Receipt of financial security in the amount of $1,286.31 for the landscape works as specified in the attached draft development permit.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Motion's carried. Item D. Anybody?
Your Worship, yes, I'll bring this forward. I move that the Wandering Wheels 10-year amendment application dated February 13, 2018, referred by the Ministry of Forests, Lands, Natural Resource Operation, and Rural Development to the City of Revelstoke, be referred to the Environmental Committee and the Economic Development Commission for review and comment.
Motion by Councillor Orlando, seconded by Councillor Sauls. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Orlando.
Yeah, Your Worship, this pertains to an application from a mountain bike touring company, Wandering Wheels, who have applied to the provincial government for a tenure, a partial tenure, and so the ministry has then sent it to the City of Revelstoke for comment on this application. We're seeing this at the council table for the first time, and the motion, as was read out, is to send the application to the Environmental Committee as well as the Economic Development Commission so they can take a look at it, review it, provide comments, and then that would come back to council for a decision. And ultimately, it is a referral to us from the ministry. There's 2 areas in question here. One of them is well outside city limits. One of them is close by to city limits, but nevertheless, they see it appropriate to refer it to us for our comment.
Councillor Nixon.
Just, Your Worship, just to remind the public that these committee meetings are public meetings, and you're welcome to come and attend these committee meetings.
Councillor Brothers.
This is an ongoing issue. We sort of had the same type of issue with the Mount McPherson and the forestry situation where, how do we get these 2 groups together so that they communicate and it would be a win-win for both groups. And it can't be a win-lose. Everybody has to understand that everybody's got to live in this community and find a way, a solution. I noticed that there's a letter further on from the North Columbia Environmental Society about their concerns, and there are other people who have raised concerns about environmental issues. Jody Lowndes, in her letter, indicated that she thought that at some point in time we should have a comprehensive recreational planning session sort of put forth by the city. And I think, I'm not suggesting that we do that right now, but I think that should be sort of a thought that we should keep in mind, because these issues are going to come up again and again, and we don't have a mechanism to sit down with all of the placeholders and figure out how we solve it so that everybody has a chance to say their piece, and we resolve the issue without
crashing heads.
And I think it's worthwhile to, again, reiterate that we've been asked, this is a referral to us, and we're getting some committees to give us information. We are not the approving authority. I don't disagree with the concept of having a bigger process, but I think that that's something that FLNRO should be spearheading and looking at, and not always on the backs of already overtaxed resources here at the city. And maybe overtaxed is a bad word to use. Since we're in financial planning stages still. Anyways, we have a Councillor Orlando.
Yeah, Your Worship. In front of us is an individual application. My comment isn't particularly related to it, but just following on what Councillor Brothers was saying. I'm not fully up to speed, but provincially there has been significant discussion or indication from the provincial government that they will be re-engaging on this general topic area. So at this point, at least in my view, sort of a wait and see to see what they roll out and what they're thinking of, and there might be an opportunity at that point to explore some of these concepts, and I'm wholly supportive of the idea of trying to find ways to again avert controversy and come up with long-term planning in immediate vicinity of Revelstoke. And that's aside from the comment that's aside from the individual application here. Yeah.
Motion is to refer to Environmental Committee and Economic Development Committee for review and comment. Any other comments? All those in favor? Motion's carried. And we are on the Economic Development Rural Dividend Fund, and I just want to, before I ask for a motion, when this came to council previously, I had a commercial, my wife and I had a commercial building that was on the short list for rental. I have since rented that out. I did previously declare a conflict of interest. That conflict of interest no longer pertains to this, and I just wanted to let everybody know for the record that I did have conflict of interest. I do not currently have one. And is anybody wishing to make a motion? Councillor Orlando.
Your Worship, yes. I move that the Mayor and Director of Corporate Administration be authorized to sign a government transfer grant agreement with the Province of British Columbia, represented by the Minister of Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development, Rural Policy and Programs in support of the Revelstoke Tourism Plan project.
Motion by Councillor Orlando, seconded by Councillor English. Discussion on the motion.
Sure, Your Worship. A little bit complicated, but at its core, we have an funding application. There's a little bit of detail in it, but there's been an application for funding which is looking for rural dividend funding in support of the fabrication lab project. As it stands right now, this application will lead to partial funding of this project, and there's other grants and funding sources being sought for this, essentially an innovation center that would have all kinds of tools, technological tools enabled to help businesses. And that's sort of a rough overview of what's happening here. It's a bit more complex than that.
Just a question for staff on this. Do we have any idea where in the community that this might be going?
I guess we can't really. Thank you for your worship. For your worship, I am in the process of looking I'm working with the Technology Committee as well as the Startup Committee to find a location for this development.
The goal here is to have it somewhere downtown. We have about 5 different locations that we're currently looking at.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any more comments or questions on the motion? Yes, Ms. Frico.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to identify an issue here. I apologize for this, but in the report it says in support of the Revelstoke Tourism Plan project. This actually should say in support of the Revelstoke Fabrication Laboratory project.
Okay. I was reading it and I'm going, did I miss something here? Okay, everybody understand what we're talking about? Councilor Orlando?
Your Worship, I'm on the Tech Advisory Committee as a council rep. Yeah, I'm just really excited about this project. There's been so much going on in the technology scene, so many initiatives, and One of the things I'd like to point out is that, provincial and federal governments are really trying to invest in this sector. So what ends up happening is there are lots of funding opportunities chances to build on what we have and get some assistance doing so. I've said it before at the council table, but the enthusiasm for these committees, the amount of people who want to get involved with this, the amount of outreach that they've achieved into the schools here, connecting with young people, connecting with businesses, attracting new businesses. I know one of the office buildings that I used to work in got rented out by a new tech company here, and it's just really great to see this kind of initiative that we can support by attracting outside funding for these projects and hopefully creating some opportunities for our community.
Motion is on the floor. Any more questions or comments? All those in favor? Motion's carried. And item 2?
Your Worship, that City Council recommend to the CSRD Board that that $120,000 be allocated from the Economic Opportunity Fund towards the Revelstoke Fabrication Laboratory Project.
Motion by Councillor Orlando, seconded by Councillor Brothers. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion's carried. And we are on item F.
I'll bring that forward, Your Worship, that the report titled Resort Municipality Initiative, written by the Director of Community Economic Development, dated March 22, 2018, be received for information.
Motion by Councillor Brothers, seconded by Councillor English. Discussion on the motion. Nice to see the RMI program at least continuing for one more year. Would be, I know that all of the resort municipalities are fighting for a longer term, and I'm happy that our CAO, Mr. Chabot, sits on that committee to ensure that it's continuing. So you've got us one more year, you've still got another 5 to go. Councillor Brothers.
I want to make sure, this is a new thing that we just got in on March 22nd. This is already allocated money, right?
Ms. Frico?
Your Worship, this is not already allocated money. It's brand new money.
Fantastic. This is just a great success.
Yeah, it's an extension of one more year. And I know there's a tourism infrastructure meeting coming up next month.
For Your Worship, there's an indication that there will be a second payment later this year. We don't know what the funding structure will be for that. They've indicated that there may be a change to how they're structuring the money coming out, but that there will be a second payment this year.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I don't have to, I'm sure, remind everybody around this table, but it's good for the community to recognize how many great things that the Resort Municipality Infrastructure Program has brought, not to mention the tourism marketing, which is another part of it, but still there's a lot of great initiatives that have been started and set up by the RMI, and we as a community get a lot of benefit from those projects. Did you have something you wanted to add to that? No, okay. Motion is on the floor. Any more comments? All those in favor? Motion is carried.
Your Worship, I'll bring forward that the City of Revelstoke's 2018 to 2032 long-term financial plan, as shown in Schedules A, B, C, D, E, and F, attached to the report from the Director of Finance, dated March 21st, 2018, titled Long-Term 2018 to 2032 Financial Plan, be approved.
Motion by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Saul. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Nixon.
Just a question for staff. In this report that we have on these schedules, there's no changes from the
There's been no changes since the core operating budget, the capital plan, and the operating spending packages were approved by council. It then went out to the public and has come back now. So there's been no changes.
Thank you.
And again, congratulations to all the staff that participated, council, and of course, Sir Beauregard, who is our financial consultant that helped us this new initiative of a 15-year plan, I think is a great document to see. I think it's a lot easier to understand, and I know we are getting some comments back from the public, and really encourage people to have a look at it. And not necessarily when it's really late at night and you're having trouble sleeping. There is a lot of good stuff in there that will rivet you to your seat. Any other comments on this motion? All those in favor? It's difficult to make jokes about financial planning. Like nobody, financial planning people, they don't laugh at stuff like that. Okay, we're in correspondence number 12A. We have a minute from administration, Silga Convention coming, and they're looking for direction on the on any money that they raised there. Go ahead.
Your Worship, one of the things that's happening in town, and it's an old group that we don't even often think about it, but it's the Crime Stoppers group. That's just my thoughts on this.
I'm thinking we're so close to the splash park being ready to go that we should try to direct that. There's a real opportunity for us to get going this year with that project. I was thinking that.
I'm looking to see who's going to make a motion. Councillor Nixon.
I'm going to make a motion to send the 50/50 donation money to the Crime Stoppers group.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Brothers. Discussion on the motion.
Your Worship, I've been hearing about people having break-ins going on in neighborhoods, and that people are not feeling good about that. And the Crime Stoppers group is a tried and true group that work hard to balance between always calling the RCMP and being vigilante groups. So I think they're a healthy group that I think I would just like to recognize.
Councillor Brothers.
I agree with Councillor Nixon. I think it's a group that maybe doesn't get a high profile every now and then. And we are in a situation, it was raised, I think, at the last council meeting about how do we get more enforcement and presence in the community in terms of policing, so that we can get the small things taken care of. And I think this is a good way to do it through the Crime Stoppers.
Okay, Councillor Duke.
What kind of dollar value are we talking about here? Do we have any idea what comes out?
I think it's like $1,000 to $2,000. So I have been, as you all know, I've been working and listening about Splash Park every day for the last year. And to avoid the Crime Stoppers having to come to my house, I'm going to have to vote against it and be supportive of the Splash Park. So we have, the Splash Park has collected $430,000 so far to date. And I know that there's a real push on, and if they get enough money by the end of April, they could still book it in to get built this year. So I know that there is going to be a real push on. So sorry, Councillor Nixon, but I'm going to have to stick to the Splash Park. Is there any other comments on the motion? Councillor Duke.
I'll vote for the crime. This is ridiculous. I'll vote for the Crime Stoppers. But anyway, it's the Splash Park is going to get the money it needs, I think, and there's other places that we can get that money. I think it's good to support this group. $2,000 is going to go a long way.
Any other comments on the motion? All those in favor? Against? Motion is carried. Is there anybody want to bring anything up about the letter from the Economic Development Commission of March 13th?
Just to recognize, Your Worship, that you're going down to see the minister next week, aren't you?
I was going to bring it up with Council later, but yes, I'm April the 17th, actually. So, and I will be talking to Chamber, looking at this, and I've been talking with staff about some other local issues, rather than just Trans-Canada Highway, but yeah.
And I was at that meeting, Your Worship, and they were very cognizant of the fact that a lot of great progress has been made on the highway and great things have been done. But people seem to think, well, we had a really terrible season. What was the reason for that terrible season? And a lot of people typed up and said, their travels along the highway, they felt that the maintenance wasn't as good. Now, whether it's because we had more snow than usual or not, but they just thought that maybe that could be a point that we just need to get known that maintenance is very important for the community.
Councillor English.
I'm just really happy that we did get this letter because it just confirms with me the things that I'm thinking about and keeps things on my radar. Just really happy to have it and want to send back a hearty thank you.
Any other comments, questions? We don't have a motion here, so I'll just be taking that under advisement of the meeting. Anybody want to bring anything out of the Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture letter regarding RMI funding?
Yes, Your Worship, there was 3 items of correspondence added after the agenda was updated this afternoon. Each of them is in regards to Wandering Wheels application for tenure on Mount Archgate and Charlestown.
Okay, so going back to item 12C, Wandering Wheels tenure amendment application, we have public comment. Is there, yes, Councilor?
Your Worship, just to make sure that we send them to the appropriate committee.
With the report. Do we need a motion for that, or is that going to be automatic?
No, I think that can happen, really.
I did have a question just because I'm reading in the correspondence that part of the Mount Cartier Trail is within city limits. Can someone think, is that confirmed it is within city limits? Yeah. Okay.
I haven't looked at it on that. I'm not positive. I'm sure that is
one of those.
This much of, the deep, there's a small sliver of, I believe where the resort line is kind of kicked down.
All right, so these, sorry, who am I looking for?
Read it carefully, it says access to the trail. So it's helicopter access. So if I go over city land, get to the trail, doesn't say trail or anywhere in the city. So it's just words I read.
And I know you're a good reader.
That's moved too.
Anyways, these comments will be passed along with our referral to the 2 committees that are going to bring back comments to us to make a decision about support.
Okay.
Councillor Sullivan.
I just want to ask a question, Your Worship. Does a commercial business like this need to have tenure to utilize these trails?
I would say when you're creating a business, so if you and I decide to hire a helicopter and fly there and ride down just on our own, I think that we're okay to do that. It's when people are paying you to do it as a business, then you need tenure.
Okay.
Or advertising those trips, from what I gather.
Councillor Duke.
Yeah, the chair, a lot of it's around guiding. So if you're guiding a group, you need to have a tenure.
Guiding a group for money.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So there's no motion here, it's just automatic referral. And now we're at the RMI funding letter under communications. And we did get a report earlier from Mr. Duke on that. And I think that we should be sending back a letter thanking the minister for continuing the program. And we still, and we always have to slip in there that we're looking forward to the continuation of the program, especially being how successful it is in our community and other resort communities. I don't know if we need a motion for that.
Nope, and the minister hints at a future beyond this year. She ends her letter by saying, I'll be in touch with you in the coming weeks with further program updates for beyond 2018-19.
There we go. Questions from media?
Was there a total amount for what the Crime Stoppers would get? I didn't hear it.
Well, it depends on how much is being raised at the SOGA convention. So it's 50-50, and it's other draws that they do to raise money, and then that money is donated to a local charity, and in this case, it would be to Crime Stoppers.
Did they have a 50-50 yet, or?
No, it's the SOGA convention is going to happen towards the end of April here in town.
Oh, okay.
You want to sell tickets for them? Raise some money?
I'm going to use that for the platform.
You want to contribute?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, thanks for voting and been helping me out there. Got any other questions, Sean? Okay. Looking for a motion to go in camera pursuant to section 90.1A and L, I think, of the community charter. Councilor English, Councilor somebody, Orlando, all in favor, motion's carried. Take a 3-minute break.